Now, with regard to what happened yesterday, if I may, this was the press conference between President von der Leyen and Chancellor Merkel. I understand that there were certain technical issues that stood in the way of a direct feed of EBS with interpretation. That happens. But my question has to do with how the pool of journalists was selected, those journalists who were present at the press conference. And given the fact that there were not only agency journalists on hand, but also non-affiliated other media journalists on hand, I would just like to know which criteria you used to select those journalists. Well, I do understand the gist of your question. I do understand that we were in a position that was particularly difficult, extremely difficult, as I announced yesterday on Twitter. I saw that certain comments had been raised on this subject. The first thing that I would like to say is that this is a press conference organized by the rotating presidency of the European Union, and within that context, they proposed a certain number of questions be presented from Brussels. We felt that was a good idea, but indeed, given the very stringent constraints that we're working under and given the very limited time of the press conference, it was very difficult to physically allow more than just a few journalists to be able to take the floor. And so we proposed to certain media of certain different countries to participate and to raise questions to the president. That was really the only criterion we used. It's far from perfect, and obviously we hope to do better next time. Well, follow-up question, if I may. I just want to know how you selected the media that were able to or allowed to raise questions to the president. Personally speaking, I do see a problem. This goes above and beyond just the technical issue at hand. It wasn't obligatory to accept the formula suggested by the German Chancellor and the presidency. The press room, as you know, has always been an open press room. I know that you select journalists for interviews, but for a press conference, and to determine who could ask questions to the president, I believe this is an unprecedented situation to have such a selection as happened. David, I take note of your criticism. Obviously, it was a very complicated situation, and we did the best we could under the circumstances, and I understand that this may not have been amenable to all. Perhaps we could simply have declined to have the press conference, but the proposal was raised, and so we tried to do our best under the circumstances. I understand this is not amenable to you, but there are 800 accredited journalists, all from respectable media, and all obviously capable of raising questions, and so we just made the choice that you're aware of, and we'll think about how we can organize things differently next time.
Voilà.
Right then. I would like to give the floor now to Mathieu.
Mathieu,
your microphone is on silent, I am told.
Ça ne semble pas marcher.
It seems not to be working, so let's move on to Tommaso.
Yeah.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the floor. It's just a follow-up, sort of, to the question of my colleague David Carretta. I just wonder if you, please, could explain why the press conference yesterday was broadcasted almost totally in German without providing translation, because, I mean, it was a disadvantage for non-German speaking. Thank you. Speakers. Thanks.
You're absolutely right, Tommaso, and I immediately responded by Twitter to explain that we had an unforeseen technical issue. We had organized interpretation into French and English, and for technical reasons which we had not foreseen, it turned out that it was impossible to synchronize the sound and the picture. We immediately tried to repair this error by making available the recordings on EBS in French, English, and German as soon as they could be made. Look, the fact is we're operating in an exceptional environment. We have been trying for the past 4 months to provide you with the best possible service in this virtual press room, and I think you know that. From time to time, issues will arise, and we are trying to make sure that when they do, we correct them as quickly as possible. I take full responsibility for what happened yesterday, and we will learn from this experience, obviously, and try to ensure that next time round things work better and are more aligned with your wishes. But please bear with us, because sometimes, despite our best attempts to try to control absolutely every angle of the organization of press events, things can unfortunately go in unexpected directions. Lawrence.
Is accusing you guys of any kind of malice or ill intent. We know the difficult circumstances that you guys are working under, but you made it clear you reached out to API and didn't get a response to them. It just seems relatively straightforward that at that point you send an email around to your very large list of journalists and say, look, this is the decision that we've made. We only have 4 questions. We've picked the 4 organizations, or maybe we've picked 3 organizations. If anyone desperately wants to ask a question or has a concern with this, let us know. Apart from anything else, we didn't know if it was press statements or a press conference, because it had been announced as a press conference, and yet there was no possibility of asking questions. So even from that point of view of planning, it was not a great situation. Again, I don't think anyone's accusing you guys of malice, and you tried very hard not to do this, but I just think that would have been reasonable to let us know in advance what was going on. Thanks.
Lawrence, I take your point. I don't say that we acted perfectly. Indeed, the whole situation arose in a context of an extremely heavy workload on many different fronts, and we tried to organize things as best we could. Indeed, it turned out that our consultations with API, and I do not blame API, by the way, at all in this regard either, turned out to be unproductive. Certainly, we can think about other ways of proceeding next time. As I said, indeed, there was definitely on our side rather the intent to try to give Brussels-based journalists an opportunity to raise questions, as opposed to simply saying we're not doing anything from here, just sort it out with our interlocutors in Berlin. On reflection, in view of the way the commentary has gone, I can tell you that I will think twice about doing this next time, and I am sure that you will find ways of asking your questions directly to the rotating presidency. So this is where we stand. Okay. I don't know if there are other questions on this. I see 2 hands raised from the Finnish news agency, but I do not see the name of the colleague. I don't know if it's on this as well. If not, I have Mathieu, who has been asking for the floor for quite some time. Who is the colleague from the Finnish news agency? Etta? Etta. Is it on this?
Thank you. Yeah, it's on this. Yeah. Hi, I'm Heta Hassiner from the Finnish News Agency. It's a follow-up. What can we expect from the future? Like, when is possible to maybe return to the press room, and like when there is going to be more face-to-face contacts in Commission, press organization, and so on? Thank you.
Thank you, Etta. We would be delighted to be able to meet again face-to-face here in the press room. You can believe that. It's quite an unusual experience to stand here day after day looking at a big screen and a little camera. Thank God I have my colleagues here to give me company. We give each other company, in fact. The answer to your question is that we do not know. It will depend on the Commission's policy when it comes to progressively reopening the Berlaymont. This is not yet on the cards. We've had, in fact, this question before. It's a very legitimate question, and I would like to point out that even when we do reopen the press room, it will be under very strict health security measures, which means that only limited seating will be available in the Berlaymont for you from the media, and therefore, certainly in initial phase, we will continue with a hybrid system so that journalists who cannot enter the press room will be able to connect. And let me point out, by the way, in this regard, that we will also have an issue there of determining who comes to the press room, right? When there is a press conference which wants to be attended by a large group of people, and that we only have, say, 60 seats available in the press room, this will be an issue on which I've also started to consult API. And let me tell you, there is no easy solution except to say first come, first serve. So bear with us because this discussion, this conversation is going to continue. Lorenzo. Lorenzo, press speak. Appuie sur.
Oui, je fais.
Voilà. Oui, on t'entend bien.
Concerning what happened yesterday, I do understand and fully appreciate the fact that you had asked Abiy, and Abiy had said that didn't want to intervene in any selection. What I would like to say is, also following what Lawrence and David have said, is that probably what we can say today is it would have been better either to refuse to select the journalists, because this is what was wrong, to select the journalists yourself, or to organize. I mean, it's working so well, this system now, the system we are using today. And if we had known that that was a press conference, it could have been organized as a press conference as today, where you decide, you can manage the fact that some journalists can ask questions from where they are, instead of having just 4 journalists selected that enter the Berlaymont and can ask the questions. So the problem, I just would like to say this, the principle is very clear, and this is what David has said. It is not up to the institution to decide which journalists are invited to answer to questions in a press conference. If it is a press conference, it must be a press conference. So either everybody can apply. If there is a limited number, then there is a first come, first arrive, first take the possibility. But it should never be that the institution selects the journalist on no matter which criteria. And there was also the disgraceful incident of the translation, which was a big problem for many of us. Because then the articles arrived 2-3 hours later, and but I appreciate it was a technical mistake, and I know that you are doing everything possible for this. So I fully believe that you have done what you could after. But the principle, I think, must be absolutely clear. And I would like also to end saying that I think we all appreciate the efforts and the way things have been going in these months. It works. It is working. So let's make it. Let's learn a lesson from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Indeed, we live and learn, as the saying goes. To come back to your point about using the system that we use on a daily basis, it's something that was not technically feasible when we were discussing the arrangements, but it is something that we will look into with our counterparts in the rotating presidency. But clearly, it is not for us to take any decisions in this regard. I welcome the very clear statement from API that now that we should, under no circumstances, work this way. I would simply like to remind everybody that there is, of course, always a selection one way or another, simply because even if you are present in the press room, ultimately I decide who gets the floor. And I specifically did not want to ask people to come to the Berlaymont under the current circumstances, which are delicate from a health point of view, if there was no opportunity to give them the floor. But look, I entirely accept that we face a situation where there is unhappiness on your side. There is a level of dissatisfaction on our side as well, both on the technical dimension and on the fact that we have to discuss this for such a long time here in the press room. Believe me, that is a good motivator to try to put in place another system next time round. But I appreciate your comment on the fact that you know that the intention of the spokesman service is to provide you with opportunities to have interactive exchanges with us, whatever the circumstances are. It did not turn out perhaps exactly the way we wanted it this time, but it definitely is simply linked to the circumstances in which the event took place, nothing else. Okay, I think that we have now closed this chapter, and we will come back